Okay, good morning. CIS 2400. Like I was saying before, we are almost coming to the end of the semester. We are now in module 8. We have one more module for next week, and then we start working on the exam. So I'm going to briefly review the assignment from last week. One of the discussion question was asking you to give me some information about streaming and how businesses are doing that. And most of you did very well, but I want to remind you, for you to get full credit, you have to post your comment through VoiceThread and then come back and make a comment. So don't just make a comment or don't just post and then disappear, because there is a section where your information is going to be stored, and it only gets there if you are able to make your post and then come back and comment. If you don't do both of those, you're not going to be getting full credit. So make sure that you do that for the coming assignment. Also, please try to make sure that you're posting your assignment at least by Friday, so that your colleagues can come back and watch your video and get some time to comment. It's very, I don't know the word for it, but inconsiderate for you to be waiting until Sunday in the afternoon to be making your post, because then you're going to be inconveniencing everybody else. So please, there are some students who are doing very well. They make their comment by Friday, and then they allow your colleagues to at least come back and review that, and then they can make their post, and then you can continue on with your life. So I got some very good examples, and we have companies that are actually making money out of this. So Netflix, that's all what they do. They're making money out of streaming data and streaming videos and all that. So that's their business model. It's all based on streaming. And if you remember, we talked about innovation, and we have actually seen how some of these companies have changed the competition. So we mentioned about Porter's competitive forces, and you can see how they were able to upset or change the dynamics in the industry. Companies like Blockbuster and all those many DVD and VHCR stores that used to exist in the past, they are no longer there. So they have all been replaced by Netflix for the most part. So that's a business model, and very many companies are making money out of that. Same thing if you're playing video games, most of them are coming to you through that. So that ensures that you don't actually have to invest in hard drive or storage location for you on your devices. So that was that. The other part was talking about how to secure a home wireless network, and I got some very good input. Let me see whether I can share some of the answers that I got from here from some of your colleagues. And thought I had a document here. Let's see whether it's going to be available. And just give me a minute. And some of you might actually recognize these as some of your answers. So I just picked some of these from some of the responses. So first thing you do is you change the name and set up the password for your wireless network. Excuse me. So that was very important. And then some of you talked about increasing security by activating the network encryption. So that ensures that your password is not easily, somebody's trying to crack it, they can do it that much easier. Okay, if you have a firewall, that also helps. Also make sure if you have some of the devices that are connected to your network, make sure that they have security software against viruses and spyware installed, and also make sure that you're updating the firmware or the software on your routers or wireless access points. Some of you also mentioned some things about give visitors a password to your Wi-Fi, so make sure that you're not doing that. And some of you actually said what you can do is, instead of giving them your password, you can actually create a guest account that you give that to your visitors, and then once they're done, you can disable that account. Someone knows, okay, so change the password frequently. That was another good answer. So if somebody has guessed it and they're already connected to you, once you change the password, they'll be dropped off. So make sure that you do that. And then also when you're making the password, make it hard. Like sometimes I like to use a phrase, and you can use like a combination of different languages or even a phrase, and then use symbols and other things on your keyboard to make it a little bit more complicated. Hide the network. That was so good. And then you can turn off the remote management. And even when you share the password, you have to be very careful, because I had one student who actually mentioned that he has a young brother, and the young brother knows the password, and he went out there and he gave the password to all his friends. So now they are having a very rough time trying to connect the internet, because they have very many people who are trying to use the Wi-Fi. So make sure that you're not sharing your password with everybody, and let everybody know what are the repercussions of doing that. So those were some of the answers I was looking for. If you gave me at least 3 of those, you got full credit. So that's where we are. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, so that's that part. And now I will briefly talk about the assignment for this week, although we have not even covered the course content, but I can mention it. So when we are going through the course material, you'll know exactly what we are talking about. So this is on learning module number 8. Now, I always encourage you to at least go through the course materials before the class. I don't know how many of you are actually doing that. That's the only way that you're going to be able to get something constructive out of the class. If you don't go through the course material before the class, anything to talk about is just going to be foreign to you, and you'll end up getting bored, or at least that's my perspective. So week 8, we have a voice thread also. So remember, I said by Friday, make sure you posted your voice thread. It's very, very simple. All the answers are in your book. I think page 423, 28 or something like that. I'll show you how you can get the answers too. So we're talking about the CRM, customer relationship management. So this is a system that most of the companies have, and it is used to manage the data about their customers. So businesses are created to provide a good or a service, and also to provide a return on investment on the stakeholders. So if you have a business and it's created to provide a good or service, that good or service is going to the customers. So they need to know who their customers are. And most of the good companies keep a good track of their customers. So one of the information systems that they can use to help them track their customers is what's called customer relationship management. Okay, so most of the sales department have this system, and they keep information about the names of their customers, their addresses. They even have like the income level. So if you go to Walmart, they know the income level of the people who shop at Walmart. If you go to Target, you'll find that they have database on the customers who shop at Walmart, and you tend to find that people who shop at Target, they earn a little bit more than people who shop at Walmart. And if you go to Macy's, they earn a little bit more higher. So they need to know that, because when they are doing their marketing, they need to know who they'll be targeting. So customer relationship management is a database that organizations keep about their customers, and it helps them be able to manage their customers. So provide at least 3 specific reasons and give the explanation of how these departments are using this. So that information is contained in your notes, and hopefully you'll be able to mention it as we go through the chapter. So make sure you post that, and like I've always said, prepare before. And what you need to do is take some notes, prepare your presentation, and then go ahead and present. And then when you're making the comment, make sure that your comment is adding value. This is a way that you're going to be learning how to communicate. I've mentioned over and over again that communication is one of the key skills that most of the employers are looking for. So when you're commenting, don't just say, "Oh, I agree with what you say and I like the way you said it. You said it so well." That's not adding value to the discussion. And if you keep doing that kind of things, when you go for a job interview, somebody asks you a question, you're gonna mention in 2 words, then you start saying things like, "You know what I'm saying?" And that right there puts some people off. So make sure that you do that. So the other apply your knowledge application. So most of you are doing very well in the apply your application knowledge area. And before I continue, one thing I want you to do is go to the grade center, and you'll find the current grade. Now, that current grade does not reflect the final exam and the remaining assignments. So there is a chance for you to improve on that grade. But you have to make sure that you're staying on top of the game. Now, before I continue, I mentioned something about giving you some extra credit. So for people who are going to be voting or the ones who have voted, send me some information, show that you did that, and you'll get extra credit. That's 5 points. If you can't vote for whatever reason and you can take somebody to vote or something like that, or you can do another charitable activity before the end of the semester, then let me know. That will give you 5 points straight. So if you have a 75 in the final exam, in the final score, and you have, for instance, voted, then you're going to get 5 points, and that push you to 80. So 75 is a C, 80 is a B. It can make a big difference. You have 85, that's a B. You get 5 points, that's to 90, that is an A. So voting or any civic engagement, go ahead, do that. You can send me the information that you did that through email, or yeah, email is much better. Take a picture, send me through the email so that we can have some record and things like that. Remember, I'm always available through the email. Now, I'm not going to the office frequently. If you have my phone on the contact, you can use that. So keep in touch. You can also go through the discussion board. That's where some people post some questions if you're not very clear, and I give you time to respond. If not, then I'll come back and respond to that. So this is the apply your knowledge for this week. You're talking about the inventory data, and this is going to require you to have Microsoft Access. So this is something that we used last time. Here is the link that will actually give you some ideas about how to go about working with Microsoft Access, but by now you should at least have an idea. So the instructions are right here. And what I can do is you can use either PDF. So I just picked from your book and just posted them here. So you'll be able to see them and you won't be able to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this and give me a minute so I can walk through this assignment so you have an idea of what is it that you're going to be working on. And Chrome tab, that's the one. Share. Any questions so far before we continue? Any questions, any concerns?
No.
Okay, so this is inventory data, and this is talking about how companies, because we are talking about the enterprise information system for this week. And enterprise is an information that covers the whole organization. Enterprise refers to the whole organization. So we have this project, it talks about the inventory data, and they give you some description here. You can read that, and then basically what they're saying is they have this store, they're not doing a very good job of keeping track of their products. Sometimes customers will come in and they order something and they're told that item is not there. So usually if you go to a store and you need something and they tell you they don't have that item in stock, some people will go to another store and it can sometimes be very discouraging. I didn't actually realize there is something going on with McDonald's. I went there a few days ago and I wanted to get like some ice cream, and they say the ice cream machine is broken. And yesterday I was reading somewhere and they're actually saying that they have like very many McDonald's that have a broken ice cream machine. So that is a little bit interesting because I didn't think it was something that's widespread. But I tell you, when I went to McDonald's and asked for ice cream, they said their machine was broken. I was actually pissed, and I was like, I'm not coming back here again. Because before that, I had read somewhere where somebody had said most of those stores will tell you the machine is broken because the employees don't want to work on it. I don't know how true that is. But told me the machine is broken. I went back that statement and said, oh, they don't want to serve people. But anyhow, so this store here, they are not doing a very good job of keeping track of products. So what you're going to be doing is to help them to generate or create a database that they can use to help them manage their database well. So you have a data that you're going to be working with. So this data is in an Excel format. And basically what you do is you'll open this data right here. And I'm going to save this somewhere. Okay, so the file is opening up. Let's see where it opens up through. Enable editing, and let me see whether I can share it out of here. So this is the database that you're going to be starting with. And I'm trying to spend a little bit of time here so you can have an idea about what you're working with. Okay, that's the file. I'm going to maximize that so you can see it. So I click enable this so that it's going to be active and allow me to do some changes. But for your case, you'll go to file and then you say save as, and then you specify wherever you're going to be saving at, and then you append your name at the end here. So this is the 3 worksheets that we have in here. This is how they are organizing their data. Okay, so they have the orders worksheet, and they have the products worksheet, and they have the suppliers worksheet. And when you read the instruction, they'll tell you that the company has this number of orders, and then they have the order date, and they have product, and they have the quantity. And then another worksheet that has information about the product. So there's a product name, product description, category, all the way like that. And then they have the suppliers. So you're talking about the enterprise information system. There is something that you're going to be talking about called supply chain management that allows a company to manage all their products from the suppliers all the way to the customer. And then we have the customer relationship management that is usually for keeping track of the customers. So this store, they have this different worksheet that they have created, and they're trying to use them to help them in managing their data. So Excel can be used for this, but it's not a very efficient method of managing the data. So the most efficient format of managing the data is using a database management system, and Microsoft Access is one of them. So this assignment, you're going to be using Microsoft Access to help us manage this data. You can also use Tableau. If you are familiar with it, you can go ahead and use Tableau. You can use SAS, you can use R. I don't think most of you are familiar with those software, so we're going to be working with Microsoft Access for now. But if you understand the fundamentals of how a relational database works, then you should be able to use those other software. We talked about relational database because what you're doing is we have what you're calling the entities or tables. So we'll create one table that's called the orders, we'll create another table that's called the products, we'll create another table that's called the supplier, and we might even create another table that we call the shipping. And then what you're going to do is you're going to join those tables all together, create some relationships between those tables. And once we populate those tables, then we'll be able to generate some reports. And then we can make informed decision based on those reports. So by looking at, for instance, these tables here, it's very difficult for you to know how many items are in the store, who are their main suppliers, what type of products they have, which ones are running low, what time do we need to reorder the items. All that becomes a little bit more complicated. And if you read the instructions from the book, you'll actually be able to see why we are having those kind of problems with this database. So that's where we start. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, so for this assignment, what you'll do is you're going to create a table, or what we're calling entities, from the instructions, and one is going to be orders. So the order is going to have an order ID, and then you can have an order date. So in that table, you're only going to put all the items that have been ordered. So anytime that an item is ordered, it's going to have an order ID and then the date that item was ordered. So in this table, the order ID will be the primary. We mentioned about the primary key is that unique field that is used to identify every item in the table or in the entity, okay, or in a record. So you have order ID, and sometimes you can have what you're calling the composite key. So composite key will help you to is a primary key that is made up of 2 field names. Okay, so composite, sometimes you'll have that. Then you'll create another entity that's called the product. So this product, of course, will have a product ID, which will be the primary key, and then you have the product name, and then you have the description, and you can have category. Okay, now because you have a category here, so when you look at this, you're looking at, we have the product, and then product description, and then you have category ID. This actually should give you a hint. Maybe you need to create another table that you call the category. So this table will contain the type of products that they have by category. So you'll have the category ID, and then you can have maybe category name. So MP3 will be can have this as category 1, and then you have MP3, category 1, category 2, category 3, because they are all MP3s, but they have different prices. So it means they are different, they're in different categories of MP3s, and on like that. And then given that here you see that we have a supplier name, you have another table that you're going to create that's called the suppliers. Okay, so this suppliers table will have a supplier ID and then a supplier name. Okay, and then you can have the contact name all the way like that. And then here we have shipping methods. You can see we have different types of shipping methods. You want to have a table that has just information about the ship. You can have a shipping ID and then you have a shipping name. So another table that's called the shipping name and a shipping ID. So eventually you will end up with a table like this. So I'm going to show you this here. It's kind of like a cheat sheet. So what I always tell you is first try to create the database on your own, and then you can come back and see how well you're able to do that. So let me see whether I can share this with you. And this is where I am. So any questions so far?
Yeah.
Are we making progress?
Yes.
Okay, I shared that. I don't know why it's not showing up. Okay, so we have that. So this is, remember I talked about having a category table. So in your notes, they're calling them entities. But remember, entities is nothing else but tables. And they ask you to create an entity relationship diagram. You don't have to worry about that. So entity relationship diagram is nothing else but is coming up with all these different tables. So from the Excel worksheet, you figure out how many tables I'm going to have. And then from there, you have the different tables. You have the category table, you have the order table, you have order details. So basically why you're having an order details, because you need to have a table that has more information. And you can go ahead and put in more information right there. We have the product, and then we have the supplier, and then we have the shipping method. So at least you should have these 6 tables. Now, what is in the category? So when you look at the category, so you have, if you go to the design, you have the category ID. In this case, they're using the auto number, and then they have the category name, which is short text. You can use the same data type. What you have to make sure is that you're consistent. So if the category ID is an auto number in this table, when you go to another table that has that as a foreign key, you have to make sure that the auto number stays there as the same in that other table. So that's your category. And then you have the order. So the order, if you look at the view, you have the order ID, and then you have the order date. So that has only 2 fields. You have the order detail. Order detail has a little more. It has the order ID and the product ID. So you can see here, this is the composite key. This is made of 2 composite key, and then you have the quantity for the order. You got the product, and you have the product. Excuse me. With the product. So this is the product table. You have the product ID, which is the primary key, and then you have all this other information. And this information is actually contained in the Excel worksheet. So if you look at the Excel worksheet and you go to the products, it has all that information right there for you. The next one is the shipping method. Remember we said in the Excel sheet there was some information about the shipping, and you just want to have a little bit more information so you can have all your shipping in one table. You have the shipping method, which is a number, the primary key, and then the shipping method is short text. So this is going to be either UPS or post office, all of that. Then of course you have the suppliers, and this information also is contained in your table. The suppliers ID, you have all that information. So that's basically how your tables are going to look like, or what you're calling the entities. Now, before you get to that, populating your tables, you're going to have to create the relationship. So once you're done with your tables, then what you'll do is you come to the database and you click on the relationship, and this has already been done. But for viewers, you might have a pop-up window here, and then you have to select all your tables and then link them together like that. Okay. So remember what you do is you just bring the mouse pointer here, hold it down, and then you drag it to wherever you want to do the connection. Okay, it's already there, so don't do that. Okay, all that. So this is what you're calling the relationship. That's what you're calling it, the relationship. And you can see this gives you all the information that you need to creating your table. So you have the order ID, order detail, product, category, supplier, shipping method. So once you finish that, then you will come back to each of the tables and then you populate the table. So you have like the category, you have category 1 is MP3, and then 2 is cell phones, and then 3 is GPS, and 4 is PDA, and on like that. And some of this information is contained in your table. So if you remember in the products, we had the category, and we have those different categories ID and category names. So let me share this really quick. I'm going to keep going back and forth because I want to make sure that you get this concept. So what I'm talking about here is share that by right there and make sure it's showing up on the screen. Okay, good. So come back. Okay, so you see the category ID. So what I did is I had a category ID and I'm saying MP3 is going to be 1. Then you have the category name. So like that, you give them the specific information. And that's suppliers. We have different suppliers, Apple supplier ID. So Apple IB1, LG 2, Nokia America 3, Cellular 4, all the way like that. So I'm hoping that you can see that relationship. Let me go back here one more time and at least get some ideas about this. Because if you are CSB major, like I mentioned before, you'll take another detailed database management class, but also it's very important that at least you have an idea because you're going to be a business manager and most of your companies are going to be managing databases, and it always helps for you to have an idea about what's going on in the organization. So that's the category, and then you have the orders, and you can see all the information, order detail, you have the product, all the way like that. Then go ahead and create those tables and then generate a couple of reports. So they tell you to generate very many reports down there. Just give me 3 reports. Okay. And some of the way you generate reports is you specify, because you have the relationship, now you can generate reports based on any of these tools down here. You click on create, and then the report wizard is the one that's usually easier to use. Okay. So you select the tables that you're going to be working with. So you have tables, queries, you have all these different tables. So if you want to do like something for category, this is what you have in that table. You have the category ID. And then if you want to do an order, you can put like maybe order date. And then you have another table that you want to do the product. So you have product name and maybe unit price for that. So these are the categories that you have selected for that. And then you click next and you specify that's how you want to do that. And then you can go ahead and if you want to finish, you'll end up with okay, it tells me something is greater. Yeah, so some of the information is missing out here. But you have, this is what you're calling the reports. And from this type of report, you'll be able to make an informed decision. So give me a couple of those reports and you should be good. Any questions?
No. Not at the moment.
Okay, so I hope that gives you some ideas of how you can go about doing that. And remember I said this is a table. Sometimes you'll be able to work with forms. So we use forms to enter the information into the database. So you have the forms like that. Excuse me. It's usually easier for you to enter information using forms, but you're not doing that for now. So just note about that. If you're a CSB major, this is something you need to pay more attention to because you'll come back to this in the near future. Okay, so that being said, let's see where we are now in terms of the class. So I'll briefly go through the course content. And let's see. There's 2 ways to look at this. Enterprise application. I think that's the book part. And you can do that. Click click on that. Okay, that's sharing. Good. Start reading. Okay, so building a connected corporation. So which this is supply chain management. This is section 8. Okay, so enterprise applications, business communications. So this is broken down into two sections. We have 8.1, which talks about supply chain management. And then section 2 is customer relationship management. So your voice thread is going to be coming from this part over here. Okay, and your apply is coming from this part here. So we talk about building a connected corporation through integration, and basically integration means bringing things together. Supply chain management is one of the most critical parts of any organization, supply chain management, because it allows a company to be able to bring all the products and resources that are required in the production of goods or services. We talked about the Dreamliner, and if you, I don't know what I shared with you, when you look at the Dreamliner, that's the Boeing 787, it is made by products or using products that come from different parts of the world. And all those products have to be shipped to Seattle, Washington for them to the plane together. So let's see. Give me a minute. I can get it here. Dream Liner suppliers. And maybe you can get some images here. Which one is good here? Just give me 1 minute. I'll try to see whether I can pull one that we can show. Okay, nothing is showing up properly, but I'll show you how you can do this actually on your own. I'm gonna share this really quick and just pardon me. So basically what I did is I went to my browser and I Googled Dreamliner suppliers, and it gives you all these different pictures. I clicked on the images, and if you do that, it's going to give you, excuse me, some of these images. Some of them are clear, others are not very clear. And I was trying to see whether I can get a bigger version of this. Yeah, it's opening on another page, which means I have to move around and just use me. Let's see. Okay, so I think that's a little bit more clear, hopefully. So this is Boeing 78 Dreamliner structure parts from around the globe. This is supply chain management. So to make this plane is one of the best in the world. Of course, now they're grounded. They're trying to, I think it's actually operational. Yeah, 787 operational. So they have all these different components and they're coming from different parts. So you see they have things that are made in the US and also they are made by different companies. So we have Boeing, we have Spirit, we have GE, we have Goodrich, and you can see where each company, what each company is making. This is one, this is UK, this is Italy, this is Korea, this is Washington, Australia, Korea. So if they are going to be putting this plane together in Seattle, Washington, they need to make sure that they are coordinating with all these different suppliers because they don't want this part to be ready when this part is not there because they cannot put the plane together if they don't have all the different components together. Also, they don't want most of the parts arriving earlier because that means that they're going to be paying storage. Also, they don't want the parts to be delayed because if they are delayed, that's going to delay the production. So there is all that coordination that has to go into it. That's what we're calling integration. Have to be constant communication with all their suppliers, and also they are also able to track where those parts are in the world. Because remember, if some of these things are being shipped and there is a hurricane and the ships have to divert their path, that might impact production. If they are coming through the air and maybe there is something that's happening with with maybe like a terrorism and some of the excuse me, countries close down their airspace, that might impact productivity. So that's part of what you're calling supply chain, and they have to coordinate, make sure that they are in constant communication. Supply chain. So that's basically what you're going to be looking at in today's class. And let's start where we were. Okay, so supply chain. So this talks about what is innate for me. So you have high profile strategic initiative. So anytime that you see strategy, you're taking a course in the School of Business, you should be familiar with strategy is nothing else but is a plan that the business has for achieving its objectives. Okay, so talking about those high profile plans that companies have to help them gain competitive advantages and business efficiencies. Supply chain management is one, customer relationship management is another one. All those different suppliers that we saw, they are part of what we are calling customer relationship management. And then we have enterprise resource planning also. So that helps to bring everything in the organization together. As a business student, you must understand the critical relationship your business will have with its employees, with its customers, with its suppliers, and all partners. Excuse me. So the supply chain management and the enterprise resource management is going to help you to understand those different relationships. You must also understand how to analyze your organizational data to ensure that you are not just meeting but exceeding the expectations, because that's how you remain above the competition. You're talking about the competitive advantage. You gain the competitive advantage, but you also have to make sure that you maintain that competitive advantage. See, some people in a race, they run and they're ahead of the line, but being ahead of the line is not everything. You have to make sure that you maintain that lead until the end. And we have seen some people running maybe 4 laps, and after 2 laps, they're ahead of the line, but they don't have enough in the tank. And in the last lap, somebody comes back and takes over, and they end up sometimes even finishing towards the end. So gaining competitive advantage is important, but also maintaining that competitive advantage. And companies are doing that all the time. So you have to always make sure that you stay on your toes. You have to make sure that you have the best initiative and you know your customers, because if you know your customers, you'll be able to make them happy. If you don't understand your customers, they'll go somewhere else. And it's actually cheaper to maintain a customer than to gain a customer. Okay, so note that. Okay, some of the examples of customers and what's going on here. Now, we mentioned about the blockchain. So this is a technology that is coming around and is actually being used to help in supply chain management. And basically what supply chain does is it helps to make sure that you know where your products are all the time, and also that data cannot be changed. So they give you some of the examples here, and they tell you about how the products move from one part, like for instance, one shipment of refrigerated goods from East Africa to Europe pass through roughly 30 people and organizations with more than 200 interactions. So something is likely bound to go wrong because there are so many touch points for these products. So with blockchain, you can help ensure provenance, providing traceability across the supply chain. This is counterfeiters and ensure safety. We have a lot of counterfeit in the US. Now you can imagine when you have a company that is making, for instance, women bags, they can put some specific information on that bag, and the stores will be able to track that product from the factory the time it gets the customer. And that way you'll be able to know which items are counterfeit, which items are not counterfeit. Now we have a lot of counterfeiting because there is no that system that is used to do the tracking. So blockchain allows us to do that. This is a new area. So if you want to venture deeper into information system, also marketing and all that, try to read it. When you go for a job interview and somebody asks you, can you tell me about any latest technologies? You talk about blockchain. That means stepping up with what's happening in the industry, and it means that you're more widely read. Okay, now I'm going to digress a little bit. I was reading something this morning, and they have the Wall Street Journal, and they came up with the ranking for the universities. And you have to remember that you're competing who are going to schools around this area, but also around the US and around the world. Now, Central is not ranked very high, but is ranked high in terms of the HBCUs. But you're not competing with people from HBCUs. You're competing with everybody. So we have the Dukes, we have the Chapel Hill, and all the way like that. So you have to make sure, because what I realized was that they're saying that for the central students, when you graduate, you have a higher debt compared with students from the other schools around here. So make sure that you're not, I don't know what is the best way to put it. What I can just tell you is make sure that you do your schoolwork and pay attention to what your professors are telling you, and even more than that, so you can be more competitive. So by the time you graduate, you can get a job. I checked some of the metrics, and they were saying that when our students graduate, 10 years after graduation, we are making that $2,000. That's not good. Students from Duke, 10 years after graduation, they are making $80,000. That's good. Okay. So make sure that because they're using the same books, they might have different resources. Of course, they have more resources, a private school, and on and on and on like that. But you can be competitive. Okay. You can change your life, and you can change lives of your loved ones. Okay, so that's blockchain right there for you. So let's keep going. So building connected cooperation through integration. I won't go through all this information here, but integration is an important component for any organization, and you can do what you're calling application integration. Is the integration of a company's existing management information system. So this is like the example. We have Blackboard. Everybody at Central uses Blackboard. So that is a system that is helping us to be able to communicate and manage our resources. So you can do application integration, and that's on the type of the software that you're using, or you can do data integration of data from multiple sources, which provides a unified view of all the data. We do have this. When you go to Banner, we have that. You'll be able to see your transcript, and your transcript includes all the classes taken from different departments or even from different schools. So that's part of what you're calling application integration and what we are calling data integration. So you can do forward integration, send the information entered the given system automatically to all downstream systems. So that's when you go to the registrar's office and you register for your classes. Everybody in the school downstream knows that. Okay, that you registered for these classes this semester. Backward integration is when your classes is dropped, like for instance, by a professor, that information is sent all the way up, and the registrar and the finance department, they know that your class has been dropped. So that way you're able to manage the resources within the organization. That's part of what you're calling the integration. So here you can see we have an example of here where we have the sales system, and then you have the order entry system, order fulfillment, billing system, all the way like that. When you go to Amazon, you pick some items, you take them in your shopping cart, and then you go ahead and pay them. The sales system at Amazon will have to is integrated with the order entry system, because through that way they're able to tell you when you can receive that item. So they have the database that's telling you if you order this item now, we can deliver it to you in 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, because they already know, they have the data in their database telling them these are the number of items that we have. Okay. Sometimes you order something and they tell you we can do it until 2 weeks, because they have that information. Okay. And the same thing with the billing information. So everything is connected. And that's part of what you're calling with either forward or backward integration with customer information. So with the billing system, it will contain your customer information. Order fulfillment system will contain all the items that have, and also the different ways and techniques that they can use for shipping that product. So if you remember in our assignment, we had some data on shipping, how you're going to be able to ship that information. So you do all that different integration tools that you can use. We have that. So supply chain management, the average company spends nearly half of every dollar it earns on suppliers and raw materials to manufacture the products. That's very important. It's not uncommon to hear of critical success factors. Remember, things that make an organization to be successful. They can either make it succeed or they can make the company fail. So the critical success factors focus on getting the right products, the right place, at time, at the right cost. That's what most of the companies do. When you buy something, they want to make sure that they get that product to you at the right time and all the way like that. So we talk about the supply chain, which is all the parties involved directly or indirectly in obtaining raw materials or a product. So usually when you talk about the supply chain, it came from manufacturing. So that's where the basic concepts are coming from. That's why we talk about raw materials. It's not every company that has raw materials, but this came from manufacturing, and that is why we keep talking about raw materials. So the 5 basic supply chain activities is you do the planning, so prepare to manage all resources required to meet the demand, and then you source. So source, we have heard about the outsourcing, insourcing, offshoring, all the way like that. You build a relationship with suppliers to procure the raw materials. Where are you sourcing your products from? Okay, so that's what you mean by, and we get the outsourcing, offshoring, all the way like that from here. And then of course you make your products, and then you have to deliver those products to your customers and provide a means by which, if the customers are not satisfied, they can return those products. So most of the stores have a customer relationship desk. They used to call it customer service. Most of the companies are changing that. They don't want to call it a customer service desk. They have these fancy names that are making the customers know that they are important and they are valued in the organization. So those are the 5 main components that encompass what you're calling the supply chain activities. Most of the stores will have that. Any questions so far? Anybody home?
No.
Okay, so when you look at this, it's an example of a typical supply. We call it the chain because it's made up of all these different interlinked components. We have upstream, that's where the suppliers of the raw materials are. Then you take that to the manufacturer, and then you distribute, and then you, if you're in retail, you take those products to the retail stores, and then you have your customer, and the customer buy the products, and you have all that, and if they're happy, they keep them. If they're not happy, they can return them. So these different components are the ones that make what you're calling supply chain. Supply chain and supply chain management. That's all about that. We actually have some schools that have a program that only deals with supply chain management. So they have logistics, because you have to make sure that when you're transporting those things, the logistics are going to be involved. Like with UPS, they don't sell anything, they just deliver. Okay, so they have to deal with the logistics, and what they do is they study all the routes, and they have to make sure that they know like the shortest route to a certain product, to a certain location. So if you read more about UPS, you'll actually hear that they try as much as possible to minimize making left turns. Okay, because anytime that you're making a left turn, most of the time you have to stop. But if you're making a right turn, you can just continue moving without making a stop. So they try to minimize making left turn as much as possible, and they can actually tell you how much they spend in terms of gasoline, which is one of their cost items. Gas, how much they're using on gas on their trucks. Okay, by them not making those stops, because anytime that you make a stop, the car is running and is not making any money. So they can compute that and tell you how much they save by not making those left turns. So when you get some time, just Google UPS, try to minimize making left turns, and you read some more inciting information about that. Okay, so this is a little bit more about that. You can read that about optimization, inventory. We come back to blockchain and how it is helping do that. Some of the advantages of blockchain, like we mentioned about counterfeits, immutability, you cannot change it. It can operate with the different systems. Provenance, entities in the chain know where each asset originated, which is very, very important. Okay, so if you're trying to avoid fraud and counterfeit, you need to have provenance. And then recalls, you can always be able to do that. Scalability, it can grow. Security, of course, is more secure. And then smart contracts. So supply chain making contracts is actually a complicated task. But blockchain, you're able to do that. Traceability all the way down like that. So I'm going to skip this a little bit because I want to go back to the CIS. So they talk about the radio frequency IDs, and it's something that you might have mentioned before. Some of the companies are using that to make sure that their products are safe, secure, and they can know where the items are all the time. So it's also part of maintaining security. Now, I was reading an article sometime, maybe a week or two, and somebody was talking about, actually I think it's a student who mentioned that, about some of the stores bringing in the automated checkout register, and say one of the disadvantages of those systems is some people actually change the tags, and I knew that I didn't do that. So they said there was one lady and she got out, but she was finally caught. she had changed the price of the bicycles. So the bicycles were worth $300 each, two bicycles, and she had put a tag for something that was like $20. So she ended up paying $20 for two $600 bikes. So anyway, so radio frequency IDs is technology that most of the companies are adopting, and it helps them to be able to keep track of their products. So read about that, and we might have seen that. We have the tag, which is on the product, and then you have the reader, then of course computer network, and they're able to communicate with that. So that's how they can use them in the retail store. Drones, some companies are doing that. I think Amazon is experimenting with using drones to deliver products. Robotics, we have seen that with artificial intelligence, and on like that. Okay, so let's see the supply chain management, and we got customer relation management. So this is where your assignment is coming from, the second part of the assignment. And these are some of the strategic goals. Find new profitable customers. So customer relationship management can highlight that the most profitable market segment consists of women between that and that who drive that and that, da, 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 da. So what you do is you have customers, and then you go ahead and analyze the data, and from the data you'll be able to reach this kind of conclusions. You cannot do this if you don't have the data. Now, of course, there are some farms that actually do what's called data farming. Okay, they have like what they call data farms, and basically what they do is they collect all this data about different organizations, and they sell this data to the companies. Okay, and then companies can use that data to know who to target. Like now, for instance, maybe you've been contacted about voting. They already know people who have voted, who have not voted, who are registered, all the way like that. So there are companies that are doing that. So exceed the current customer expectations. You know what your customers want. When you leave the comments, you can go back there and see. And I've seen some companies actually, like I was looking for a TV, and I went online, and some people were giving some positive reviews for the TV, and others were giving negative reviews for the TV. But there's actually somebody who gave not a positive review, and somebody from the company responded and said, "This is what we are doing with our TV system. If you have some issues, please call this number. We'll be willing to help you set the colors, brightness, and on like that." So that is part of what we're calling customer relationship management, because you want to make sure that you know what your customers are doing and what they are saying about you. You don't want information out there about you that is not so positive. So I hope sometimes you can be able to do that when you guys make those comments on internet, but sometimes we don't. So that's just life. Okay, competition. So these are some of the reasons or some of the answers that you can actually use in your hint voice thread. So all the information is right here. Okay. So evolution of the CRM, you can use it to help you with all this reporting, analyzing the data. Customers are at risk of leaving, blah 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 like that. So power of the customer. So what is the customer able to do? And you can see the information here. They talk about that advertisement, Valentine, another way like that. So how can you measure success of your customer relationship management? Sales metric, number of prospective customers, customers metrics, cases closed same day. So this means that how many customers, like for instance, most of the stores, they want to know if somebody goes on the internet and they put things on the shopping cart, do they finish that? Do they check out? Do they pay for it? So they want to know why are most of the customers putting things in the shopping cart and not finishing. They also want to know how long you're spending on the website. They know that. They also want to know where are you coming from when you go to their website. And sometimes where are you going when you leave their website? So they have some software that you can actually be used to help track all that. And that's part of what you're calling customer relationship management. So number of new customers. Okay, so it's very important. The companies want to know how many new customers they're getting. And this is very important because it's more expensive to get a new customer. It might be cost like what? Maybe 70 cents, example, to acquire a new customer, and only 10 cents to maintain a customer. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important that when you get a customer, make sure that they stay with you. Okay, so they have the number of customer retention rates. So these are some of the metrics that you can use to help you in seeing how your customer relationship management system is working. Any questions?
No.
Okay, so if there's no question, I'm gonna stop there for today. So make sure you go through this, have an idea about what these resources are. And if you have any question, let me know. It might seem like to be a lot, but it's actually a good resource for you to know. Enterprise resource planning is also another important component that you can use in the organization. Okay, and it tells you to be able, all this is about the data, is managing the data that you have in your organization, managing the data that you have. SAP is a very good example of what you're calling enterprise resource management, and it helps manage the resources in the whole organization. Actually, Banner is an example of an enterprise resource planning software because it helps us manage all the resources and it connects all the different departments in the organization, from the human resource, okay, to all the employees, to the registrar's office, like that. Okay. Now, some companies actually have specific software for specific departments. Like you can have accounting information system, you can have information for the organization, computer information system, and then you can have human resource management. That's another system just for managing your employees. The same way you have supply chain management, customer relationship management, on and on like that. Okay, so read a little bit of this, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I will be able to respond to your queries anytime. Any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to stop recording this.